number 10 as videos go. This is literally the last bit, the behavioral bits, and it's all going to be living in social groups, insect social structures first, and then vertebrate social structures. So first of all, what are social behaviors? A bit like with competition, where you've had the inter and intra-specific competition, the same happens with behaviors. You can have social interactions or communication taking place within a species or between different species. Now, obviously, between species, it doesn't always quite work how you'd imagine it should work. The language or the behaviors that they use may be different altogether. So it does really rely on the ability of individuals within the species, usually, to be able to communicate with one another. And you can get really complex social structures. We'll talk about the bees a bit later on. Careful, not all communication is necessarily social behavior. It may just be threatening and I'm going to eat you. Right, the first keyword to know is a sign stimulus. It literally is a signal that's being sent by somebody, and it's a physical thing. It's a physical appearance that triggers a behavior. So what does with birds feeding, it's quite straightforward. There are various songbirds here in Britain where as soon as mummy or daddy bringing the food see the inside of the open mouth of the youngling, they will drop their food into that shape, into that red area that comes inside the beak. With seagulls, there's a red spot inside the mum's beak. So once the mum has opened the beak, you get to see that red spot, and the younglings will peck around there and get the food regurgitated for them. So different birds, different sign stimuli. There seem to be shapes, so it seems to be a red patch within the mouth area. I know that for our British songbirds, it seems to be the red part within the baby bird's mouth that is a sign stimulus to the parents. Now, with fish, there's been research done on stickleback, and there are two different appearances that trigger behaviors. On one side, you've got the males. Males can come with or without a red belly. If males have a red belly, that means they are ready to mate, and will actually then more likely be attacked by other mates. Their behavior becomes territorial, their nest building, it's literally reproduction phase, and males will attack other males that have got red bellies. Now, if you give a stickleback fish a red piece of plastic and move it about in water a little bit, it will attack that red piece of plastic. So it is the red belly that triggers the attack. Now, the other thing is when a male then sees a female with a swollen belly, the swollen belly, the grey silver swollen belly, makes the males trigger a behavior that is trying to guide the female to the nest. So it's kind of come female, come to nest, come female, come to nest, kind of swinging forwards and backwards behavior. Now, male stickleback fish will display that behavior even though if there's a silvery piece of plastic or piece of metal presented to them that looks like a swollen belly, they will go for that. So it's literally the appearance. That's just another picture to show the swollen belly of females. It literally just triggers males to try to encourage the female to get into the nest. So that's sign stimulus for birds and fish. Now, the next big keyword in terms of behaviors, we've got fixed action patterns. Behaviors that you do not need to think about. Let's say you're about to fall over and catch yourself, the way you put your foot out to stop catching, to stop falling. They are fixed action patterns. They are stereotyped, they're defined, coordinated, predictable. I'll give you a couple of examples as well. The yawning sloth is there for a reason, okay? They're major fixed patterns, and some of them can be learned, but once you've learned them, a bit like playing an instrument, if you know the same move over and over and over again, you know what you're doing. Your teenagers, the way you are interacting with your mobile phones, part of your finger control, thumb control will become a fixed action pattern after enough repetition. The ones that we're born with, they're the suckling reflex in humans. I'm calling it reflex. I should call it the fixed action pattern. That is all the muscle coordination that goes around crying, yawning, walking. Yes, you do need to learn walking, but again, once you've practiced that enough, it becomes a fixed action pattern. Same with instrument playing, cycling. So it is a bit like a reflex, but it is involving a larger number of neurons. And with bigger animals, you can have a fixed action pattern triggered. For cheetahs, there's an effect of hunger. If a cheetah is hunger, they will show that luring stalking behavior, that they're bending their knees and triggering, starting looking between grass stalks to see what can they see on the other side. So that stalking behavior, that is starting to be triggered by actual hunger. Right, a little bit about insect social structures, and it's going to go into bees much more than anything. You can have different colonies, ants, bees, wasps, termites. They all show a social interaction where looking after the next generation, looking after the grandchildren of the queen, if that makes sense. That will become a domain of the drones and of the female workers. So we'll need to have a look as to why do they do that, because there's genetically something, there's a genetic trick that they're doing. The overlap of generation, you're going to have that with the vertebrates as well. If you've got an overlap of generations, then you will see social structure. Speaking to the parent generation, to the grandparent generation, what is that interaction? Now, with the insects, you are actually getting caste systems. You're getting genetically sometimes predetermined labor division as to who's in charge of doing which job. Now, for the honeybee, you have got one queen, which is diploid. We'll look at that a bit later. You've got a few hundred reproductive males. Drones are haploid. And you're getting tens of thousands of female workers. Now, the female workers are diploid, but they're sterile, so they cannot themselves reproduce. They will do the whole thing that goes into looking after the next generation. So all the care of the half sisterlings or half childrenish things, but they're not actually their genetic children themselves, because female workers are sterile, they cannot reproduce. So what do the female workers do? They look after the wax, they find food, cleaning, maintaining, defending, caring for the young. Now let's link that a little bit to the genetics. Why would you may in psychology or in sociology may have heard the word altruistic behavior. Altruistic behavior is when you do something without actually seeing the benefit for yourself, but it benefits the society, or it benefits a bigger picture, benefits somebody else you care about. Now, in humans, if as a parent you look after your child is 50% of who you are genetically. The other 50% come from the other parent. Now, with honeybees, the queen doesn't do any of the looking after. It's the female workers that do the looking after the next generation. So after the younglings that the queen has produced. Queen is diploid and produces the youngs with a haploid copy from the male. So therefore the young ones produced, it sounds a bit weird, we'll have more to do with the female workers than another sibling would have to do with them. The genetics, you can calculate that genetics out. If you have 2 strands potentially from the mother and 1 strand only potentially from the father, how much genetically will go into the youngling, and therefore how similar is the young and the next generation to the female worker. Now, the female workers have actually got a 75% genetically identical to the young that the queen and the male drone have made. So it's not only a sisterly relationship, and not even a parent-like genetic relationship. 75% of the female workers' DNA are identical to the DNA of the young bees that they're looking after. Now, clearly, that is not altruistic anymore. That's not kind of self-sacrificing. It kind of is, but at the same time, the identical genetic makeup is being passed on to the next generation. So it is in the female workers' interest to pass on their genes, even though they are the mum's genes, the queen's genes. It's a bit complicated. There are a couple of nice videos on YouTube about that. If you want, I'll show you those. The actual young only share 50% with their mom, stroke with the male parent. So if the queen and a male drone had children with each other, that would be the young, and the queen actually then only has 50% of its identity genetically in the next generation. So yeah, just kind of explaining why I've tried to put it into a little sentence here at the bottom. The mom is diploid, the dad is haploid, and then that leads to that weird percentage of what is inherited by the next generation, and therefore the overlap with the female worker. Now, communication in bees. Bees talk to one another completely without words, obviously. They communicate by touch. Pheromones are, think of them as perfume or scent particles that an animal can spray up or mist up around themselves, and by moves. Now, the waggle dance, which helps bees to communicate the direction and the distance away from the hive. There's an in-between dance, the round dance, which tells them there's food 70-ish meters about from the hive, so very close to the hive, but there's no direction given, which there's a video for that one here. And for the waggle dance as well, that's going to be in the video as well, which is the food is further if you do a waggle run, so run, and then it kind of goes back and back and back in circles to show right in that direction, but much further. In that direction, but much further. So it's a bee coming to the hive and explaining to others how far the food is. Nobel Prize was won for that discovery of those dances. Now, the social structure in vertebrates becomes complex. You've got those many generations living together as well. So in vertebrates, you get the social grouping evolving several times and away from one another. The most social are birds and mammals, but amphibians communicate somehow around breeding time. They will do their croaking and their calls to the female to attract those. Now, the behaviors, the next few slides are just lovely pictures and animations, lovely GIFs on kind of making those behaviors more obvious. What do we have as vertebrate behaviors? Rearing young together, overlapping generations living together. That automatically means you might have, I'll get to that literally, you might have matriarchs or patriarchs in the society. Cooperative foraging, so hunting together, gathering together, defending against predators as a group, that is a vertebrate behavior, and learning in a social setting. So the next few slides are just to visualize that. The cooperative rearing of young, here we've got your baby elephant being cared for. And you have got parents, grandparents, and babies living together. You have got hunting in packs. That's a very common one, that you've got dog and cat species hunting in packs. Cooperative defense against predators. There are loads and loads of videos online where bison chase away wolves and literally herds of elephants stomping around until all the lions have left again. So there is a defending behavior patterns. And social learning, how much do you learn from another organism in that social grouping? Right, I'll pause it here to not make the video too long.